Okay, this is Missing Details Part 2, and I'm doing this because of what Tecton TV left for me as a comment. He says that has to be the absolutely stupidest reason for thinking that Isaac was carrying logs that I have ever seen. Well, really, we're going to get into that. Why not take it further? He was a type of Christ, so he was only carrying one wooden piece, which was plenty easy, especially when he hadn't been whipped to within an inch of his life. Or maybe you want to say, since he was a type of Christ, Abe gave him a belt whooping before they ascended. Please. Okay, well, let's add some facts to this. So, first of all, how tall is Mount Moriah? He never mentions this, but I'm going to. And we're going to start adding some details to this. Therefore, we'll get a much clearer picture. Number one, Mount Moriah, okay, is 777 meters tall. Now, that's a very significant number because in the Bible, 7 represents the number of completion. Therefore, it's a very significant number. Now, you have Isaac. Now, Isaac, depending on who you read, is somewhere between 12 and 20 years old at this point. Okay? And Tecton TV was making a big old schlemiel, if you want to call it that, about how athletic he was. Well, I don't care how athletic this kid is. Okay? He's carrying some heavy wood. How do we make that association, okay? If we're going to say that Isaac is a type of Christ, he was carrying a heavy burden. And I guarantee you the wood that was on Jesus' shoulders was pretty heavy. So if we're going to make that analogy, we're going to say that Isaac was carrying a pretty heavy load himself. That meant heavy logs. Now we can further prove this by the fact that Abraham would have had Isaac carry enough wood up there to burn a human body. Now, how big were these people? Okay, depending on who you ask, they ranged anywhere between 5'1" and 5 feet tall. Okay, so they were either somewhere about 5 foot 1 inch tall to 5 feet 5 inches tall. That's about average. Little shorter than myself, I'll give you that, but pretty average. Okay? So it would have taken a lot of wood to burn a body like that. A lot of heavy wood. Now, what kind of wood are we talking about here? We're talking about anything between cedar wood, pine wood, and fig wood, because that's the kind of thing that was growing in that area. So any one of them would have been suitable to burn. And I guarantee you that kind of wood is not light. They were not burning twigs up there, people. Now, you have the heavy wood, okay? You have Mount Moriah, which is 777 meters tall. You also have to factor in the kind of shoes these people were wearing, okay? They were sandals. And the sandals would have been made out of wood, and it would have attached to the foot by leather straps. Okay? And there was no paved road leading up the 777 meters from the base of Mount Moriah to the top where they were going to actually do the sacrifice. So you start adding all those details together. I don't care how fit this kid was. He would have been pretty exhausted by the time he took all that wood up there. End of story. Now, in defense of Tecton, I will say this, that it was customary not to go questioning your parents at that time. I don't think that Isaac would have ever questioned his father. He might have had the questions in his mind, but he certainly would have never uttered them to Abraham. Even when he was told that he would be the sacrifice, even when he was starting to be tied down, he really had an honoring of his father to the point where he really wouldn't have questioned that. Okay? He probably had in the back of his mind, oh, my father really is going to do this. My father loves me. I'm not going to go through with this. Okay? I'm sure it made him a little nervous, but on the other hand, I don't think that Isaac would have ever had any doubts about Abraham's intentions. Okay? Because they had a good father-to-son relationship. So that I will say. But we have to factor in all of these pieces of data. This is something he did not present in his Abraham and Isaac sacrificial presentation. And this is what I was trying to catch him on. Is like, okay, if these atheists ever discover this kind of data, they're going to nail you on it. But okay, you don't want to present this kind of stuff? Fine, I'll present it. Now, as for NonSequitur, it may come as quite a surprise to you to find out that I am pretty well versed in how to read and write Latin. And this is about things not following in a logical order. Now, that's just the Farmer Bob terminology for it. We can be more precise if we want to, but I wanted to make sure Farmer Bob, who would ever watch this, would understand this as well. But what Tecton TV was implying was that my logic was flawed. My logic was not flawed. Okay? Because we're associating the heavy burden of Jesus with the heavy burden of Isaac. That therefore proves that he was carrying heavy logs up 777 meters of a mountain, hill, whatever you want to call it. Just depends on who you ask, is whether they would call it a hill or a mountain. Because some people call it hill, some people call it mountain. Obviously it has the title of Mount Moriah, so somebody wants to call it a mountain. I don't know that I would do that, but there you go. And you're carrying enough wood to burn a person that is somewhere between 5'1" and 5'5" inches tall. So I think I've pretty well made my point. Now, let's see what you have to say about that, Tecton TV. Alright, the data is now in front of you. You deal with it. I'll tell you more in a future video. Stay tuned.